I'm Josh Cohn, Mayor of the City of Rye, and it's my honor to welcome you to this remembrance of September 11th, 2001. We'll begin with a blessing from Reverend Andrea Rayner.
On this, the 19th anniversary of the September 11th attacks, we come together to remember and to grieve those who were lost, people who simply got up and went to work on that beautiful September morning. Friends and neighbors, family members, lives and loves that can never be replaced were taken from us in the most shocking and traumatic and public way possible. We hold them in our hearts, along with the countless children who grew up with little or no memories of fathers and mothers. We also remember the brave men and women who ran toward the burning towers at great personal peril. We honor those who risked their lives and those who lost their lives on that day and in all the days to follow as 9/11 cancers began to take their toll. And we come to support all who are still haunted by images that remain unspoken or somehow buried under the deep scars on their hearts. If you are having trouble mustering your empathy and compassion this year, it may be because our community, our nation, our world is on grief overload. In the midst of this pandemic, with almost 190,000 Americans dead, with unemployment surging, and our nation torn by racial strife and political battling, it's understandable to be feeling a bit numb, to feel you just don't have the emotional bandwidth to pause and hold space in your hearts this year for this anniversary. I get it, but maybe that's exactly why it's so important for us to do so. If families who lost loved ones still have the courage to grieve, if first responders still have the fortitude to keep responding, then surely we can find it in ourselves to honor them by remembering. Honoring and remembering 9/11 is important, not only because it drew a line in the sand for so many in our community and in our nation, but rather because we made a promise 19 years ago to never forget. If we shrug off that promise, if we get tired of keeping it, we will have lost something good and essential about ourselves, the capacity to learn from the past and to feel with the brokenhearted. Born of shared sorrow, what ignited in us 19 years ago was compassion, empathy, strength, and unity. And one of the ways that we keep these flames alive is by remembering. As we look back and recall where we were, writes the Reverend Jill Duffield, who was with us and how we felt on that fateful day, may those vivid memories compel us to acts of kindness, words of love, and demonstrations of community. May the myriad images of helpers, firefighters, police officers, office workers, ordinary citizens be the icons that inspire us to be helpers too. May the texts and voicemails of "I love you" and "you are everything to me" assure us that love always has the last word and that we should never wait to say it. In closing, I offer you this prayer from Hindu monk Radhanatha Swami. While our landmarks collapsed in a cloud of smoke and debris, beneath a surge of shock and rage, something awakened in our hearts: compassion. In memory of this tragic day, let us join hands and pray for God's grace to heal, unite, and empower us to serve with love. May it be so. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Well before 9/11, late summer brings me an unease that I soon recognize as the beginning of reflection on that blue sky day of enormous, enormous loss. As mayor, it's my privilege to try to share what I think we might do that will make this 9/11 more than a day of sadness, what we might make of 9/11 to make it better than a renewal of the day's historic tragedy. My thoughts, like me their author, are not profound, but I profoundly hope they're useful to you. First, we must make today about honoring those we lost on 9/11 and in the still continuing aftermath. Those who simply got up, went to work, and found themselves caught in a terrorist act of unbelievable cruelty. And those who tried to save them, and in doing so lost themselves, perhaps years later, through the slow toils of disease. More than honoring those precious souls, however, today should be about remembering them in full, not in death, but as they were in life. Many of us knew the people behind the names on the list to be read shortly. On this day, especially, remember a face, a voice, a touch of the hand, a smile, a good deed, a good time shared. On this day, hold those memories of life, not death, yet a little closer to your hearts. Today as well is a day for us to open our hearts to those whose losses to 9/11 were especially great. Those who lost spouses, parents, children, and others dear beyond words. We share your grief. We commend the strength you've found to bear these losses and continue on, even as you remember, as we always will remember. In our remembering, it's also good to reflect upon the unity this country showed following September 11th, 2001. Then we had a prodigious act of hate to galvanize us to unite. Today we face a complex of challenges twisted around a pandemic, making a picture harder to read. Nonetheless, the need to unite is perfectly clear. We pulled together then, we must pull together again now. Let me come back to the beginning, though. Above all, let us remember the people, all our people, lost to 9/11, and how blessed we were to have shared life with them. Thank you. Now I'm pleased to introduce our guests. Joining us first is County Executive George Latimer.
Hi, I'm George Latimer, Rye resident and neighbor and Westchester County Executive. What happened on September 11th, 2001 has special meaning to those of us who live here in the city of Rye. We lost many friends, people that we knew, people that were part of our community family here in Rye, and so it has a deeper impact on those of us. And now that 19 years have passed, the pain of loss is still there. And not only did we lose people that day, civilians who went to work and wound up facing a terrible tragedy, but also those emergency service workers, the police, the firefighters, the EMS people who went into the towers to try to save lives and saved many lives before many of them lost their own lives. And then in the years that followed, those that worked on the pile that have now suffered 9/11 related diseases, part of the continuing tragedy of the 9/11 tragedy. But we gained further renewed commitment together as a family, as a Rye family, as an American family, to try to learn the lessons of unity that we need to have. When those terrorists attacked us, they didn't attack us because we were of one political party or one particular demographic. They didn't differentiate by age or our religion. They attacked all of us because we were Americans. And it's helpful in a day of division in our own country where we have our disagreements and we have our debates to remember that more unites us than divides us. So on this September 11th, on the 19th commemoration, a year before, 20 years have passed, we joined forces together in this Rye community. I joined with Mayor Josh Cohen, members of the Rye City Council, other elected officials, the people in this community, to remember those that we've lost and to try to celebrate a renewed sense of unity as fellow Rye residents and fellow Americans.
Thank you, George. State Senator Shelley Mayer will now offer a few words.
19 years ago on this date, for me and for millions of Americans, the world changed. While we gasped in horror and disbelief as the Twin Towers fell, life changed forever for our nation, for our neighbors, and our friends. 15 Rye residents lost their lives that day, and today we honor their memory. Their loss is a void that will not be forgotten and will never be filled. Each of us remembers that awful feeling of dread as the day unfolded and we realized it was not an accident, but an attack on our nation. We realized that our feelings of security and innocence were no longer justified. Yet for 15 Rye families, that dread was even more terrible. For them, the loss was not general, it was personal. In reading the New York Times story on September 23rd, 2001, about the events of 9/11 and their impact on Rye, Robert Martin was quoted as saying, "These were guys on the doorsteps of life. They had finally made it. They had been knocking on the door, and now they were about to join the party." Martin captured that terrible feeling when young men entering the prime of their family lives, their community lives, and their social lives lost it in an instant. They were truly on the doorstep of life, and our hearts are forever broken by their loss. Yet in the face of such national pain, in the face of thousands lost, our country responded with a sense of patriotism, sacrifice, and empathy. We remember it distinctly as if it was yesterday. We comforted each other, we cared for each other, we loved each other as family. That message of care and sacrifice continues still, every day, even now for our first responders. I recall distinctly the line of police cars and fire trucks driving down the West Side Highway, ready to go into battle. No one stopped to ask, should I go? Is there someone I know at risk? No, they jumped in their cars and their trucks, their ambulances, and they barreled down there because they were needed. These first responders also paid a terrible price for their actions. So many have gotten sick, and so many have died. We remember them today as well, even if the drastic results of exposure were a month or years later. Yet in the face of it all, even today, these first responders continue to jump in and say, where, when, and how can I help? Our peace officers, our police officers, our firefighters, our EMTs, they step into harm's way without question. They do so out of loyalty, out of patriotism, out of sacrifice and empathy. We owe them our deepest gratitude. We cannot forget their sacrifice, and we need to learn again from their example. Today, on this solemn anniversary, let us learn the lessons of that fateful day and remind ourselves not only of the terrible loss of 15 Rye residents and their families, but of love and support of our community as family. We stand by them, and in our sadness, let us be the message of hope and family that we need to recall on this solemn day. Thank you.
Shelley, thank you for that. Assemblyman Steve Otis will kindly provide his remarks.
In the days that followed September 11th, 2001, our community came together on the village green to share our grief during a candlelight vigil. We came together in houses of worship to mourn our friends and neighbors. We came together in smaller groups to comfort the families who suffered unimaginable loss. And every year, we come together on September 11, this year virtually, to honor 14 precious members of our community we lost 19 years ago. Our remembrance of their exceptional lives goes well beyond today. They are in our thoughts throughout the year. We beckon our memories of times together, activities, friendships, and laughter, a way to summon them back, to keep them in our hearts. These are the thoughts that are with us always. September 11 is a day to honor the members of our community taken from us. Rye's loss was great. For a community of our size, to have 14 killed was a heavy toll. Today, again, we come together to say we care and we deeply feel what we have lost. 19 years of their time here with us just taken away. The evil will never be forgotten that took almost 3,000 lives and also left many first responders with deadly illnesses and changed the lives of countless families and friends. But today, let's remember the happy moments. The energy of the lives of the 14 dear members of the Rye community who we honor at the gazebo behind the Square House a few feet away. The fathers, brothers, husbands, children stolen from our town, but not our hearts. Through our annual September 11th ceremony, we continue to say as a community, we love, we miss, and we honor you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Last but never least, let me introduce County Legislator Catherine Parker.
Good afternoon. I'm Catherine Parker, County Legislator, and I remember 9/11, even though it was 20 years ago, it still feels like it was just yesterday. As horrible a day as that was, one of the things that I think gives me a great deal of comfort at this time of year is remembering how our friends and neighbors really jumped into action to help those that were in distress. Our first responders from Rye ran down to the World Trade Center to do whatever they could do to help. We had people that immediately went to hospitals to give blood. I think back on that, and what I remember most is that we all came together as citizens of Rye, as citizens of New York, as citizens of this country. We were unified. We understood that we were better together, and it didn't matter at that time or place where anybody was from, what anybody did for a living, what party somebody belonged to, what their religion was. We were together. And as we go forward, I think that's the lesson that we need to take looking ahead. We are the United States. We are united in our belief that this is a wonderful country, and that is the lesson that I think we all have from 9/11.
Catherine, thank you. Now I ask you all to join me in a moment of silence. Holly O'Neill Melville will now read the list of names of those lost to 9/11.
Thomas Crotty, Ben Fisher, Yuji Goya, Ward Haynes, Takashi Kinoshita, Gary E. Keckler, Teddy Maloney, Frank McGuinn, Robert McLaughlin, Jr., Christopher D. Mello, George W. Morrell, Sean Gordon O'Neill, Tommy Palazzo, Michael John Simon, Alan V. Upton, Kevin Nolan,
This concludes our remembrance. Please stay safe and be well.